Mastering chord progressions doesn't have to be complicated. In just 8 minutes, I'm going to take you through 8 powerful steps that will help you to create compelling, musical and expressive chord progressions. These steps work across genres and skill levels, and by the end, you'll have the tools to make your chord progression sound more interesting, emotional and professional. Let's begin with step 1. Use primary chords. The easiest place to start a progression is with the 1, 4 and 5 chords in a major key. This is the backbone of countless songs, and it's where you should begin if you want solid, reliable chord progressions. In the key of C major, that's C, F and G. Step 2 brings in our first minor chord, 6. Adding minor chords to a progression adds some emotional depth that can elevate your music. Despite the association of major keys with happy feelings, minor chords have an important role in complementing major chords to enhance the sound of your songs. The 6 chord is the relative minor chord to the 1 tonic in major keys. It introduces a more emotional or darker flavour. For example, by adding 6 to the primary 1-4-5 set, you get the famous 4-chord pop progression 1-5-6-4, sometimes called the 50s progression. It gives the listener a satisfying touch of minor amidst major chords. Here's how it sounds in the key of C major. If you're enjoying the content, then subscribe to the channel. I make videos like this every week to help you to write better songs, and subscribing means you won't miss the next tip that could take your songwriting to the next level. Now it's time for step 3. And we're expanding our chord options again. There are 7 diatonic chords in major keys. You can see them on screen for the C major key now. We've used 4 of them so far, so let's keep going and use another minor chord, the 2 chord. Including the 2 chord allows us to create stronger resolutions. That's because the 2 chord pulls strongly to the 5 chord, which itself pulls us back to the 1 tonic chord. This 2-5-1 progression is a classic and is particularly popular in jazz. Here's how that sounds in the key of C major. So anywhere you have a 5 chord in a progression, you can play 2 before it to generate a smooth and satisfying turnaround. You can also play this chord as a minor 7th chord, which provides a richer sound. Let's adapt the common 1-5-6-4 progression in the key of C major by adding a 2 minor 7th before the 5. Listen to how you further anticipate the 1 chord after 5 here with the added 2 minor 7. So when we instead play 6 and 4, it's somewhat surprising. On to step 4, and this is a powerful idea that many songwriters overlook, but it's really simple to use. Instead of jumping between chords in a way that sounds disjointed, try playing a chord with a different bass note. These are called chord inversions or slash chords. A chord inversion means you play a chord with a note other than the root note in the bass, notated as slash chords like G/B, meaning a G chord with B in the bass. Inversions don't change the chord's identity, but they change its sound subtly and connect chords more smoothly. By using inversions, you can achieve stepwise motion in the bass or voice leading that glues your progressions together. For example, you could take a 1-5-6-5 progression and play the first 5 chord in first inversion. This means we take the 3rd note of the chord and put it in the bass. In the key of C major, that means we play the G/B chord. This then creates a descending stepwise bass line moving from C to B and then to A. This makes the progression flow gracefully. Compare it to the standard version now. With just these 4 simple steps, you've got more than enough knowledge to write a song. If you want to learn how to put this all together and write your first song in just 1 hour, then head over to writeasongnow.com or click the link in the description and I'll show you my simple system. Time for the 5th step now, and an extremely powerful, widely used idea: borrowing chords from the parallel minor. You can introduce chords from the parallel minor key, which is the minor key of the same root, to add colour and surprise, while still fitting the song's overall mood. This technique, called modal interchange, lets you use darker or unexpected chords without completely changing key. For example, if you're in the key of C major, you can borrow chords from the C minor key. You can see the C minor key chords on screen now. Common chords to try out are the flat 6, flat 3 and flat 7 chords. These borrowed chords give your progressions a moody, cinematic quality. The main tip is to not overdo it with modal interchange. Always resolve these borrowed chords back into your diatonic chords in a logical way so they feel surprising yet musical. Otherwise you are getting into the territory of full key changes. Another popular borrowed chord to use is the minor 4. Here's an example of the melancholic sound it provides in the key of C major. Let's consider step 6 now, using secondary dominants for added tension. A secondary dominant is a temporary 5 chord that leads to something other than the 1 chord. In practice, you treat one of your chords as a new temporary target and precede it with its own 5 chord to intensify the pull towards that chord. This brings in an out of key chord that resolves quickly back into the key, which adds drama. For example, in the key of C major, if your progression goes to a G chord, try inserting a D7 right before G. The D7 is not diatonic to C major, but it strongly pulls to G, giving your progression a new spice. You can do this with other chords too, like 5 of 2, 5 of 6, etc. Secondary dominants are a favourite trick to make a predictable chord progression suddenly sound more sophisticated and emotionally driven. For example, listen to this C major key example, which uses the 5 of 6 and the 5 of 5 to bring movement to this otherwise vanilla progression. Time for step 7, add a diminished passing chord. Diminished chords are dissonant and unstable, which makes them perfect for leading the ear to a more stable chord. They often function as a leading tone chord, essentially a tension that resolves up half a step. By inserting a diminished chord in between two diatonic chords that are a whole step apart, you create a stepwise chromatic bass line and a strong sense of resolution into the next chord. For example, in the key of C major, between C and D minor, slip in a C sharp diminished chord. This C sharp diminished chord is built on the half step between C and D, and it will crave resolution to D minor. Here's how that sounds when enhancing our 2-5-1 progression. And now we'll take a look at step 8. Break the rules once in a while. Music theory provides guidelines, but in songwriting you can occasionally defy expectations to create memorable moments. Once you're comfortable with diatonic progressions and their variations, try throwing in a totally unexpected chord or progression for effect. The key is to use surprise chords deliberately, perhaps to highlight a lyric or transition to a new section. Many iconic songs have 1 or 2 chords that theoretically shouldn't work, but because the songwriter handled the tension and release well, those moments become the most memorable parts of the song. Your ear will guide you to what sounds cool or emotionally resonant. Now that you've got these 8 techniques, you can mix and match them to create progressions that sound fresh and interesting. The more that you explore, the more unique and expressive your progressions will become. But if you want to take things further and really master minor key progressions, then check out this next video. I'll show you how to create darker, moodier chord changes that will transform your songwriting. Click on it now, and I'll see you there.